from a candidate perspective, I would say networking, network. Find other people that look like you, that are doing the things that you want to do, and talk to them, ask them questions, pick their brains. I understand that everyone isn't super willing to reach down and pull up other people, but most people are. I'm definitely one of those people. I know Marvina is one of those people, although we're not, in tech, but, we're recruiters that do have a reach. So network, never be afraid to shoot your shot and to reach out to someone and make a connection, because you never know what that can turn into.
Mm-hmm. Connections are huge.
We often overlook the networking part. And I think especially the early career folks, they're just focused on getting the good grades, maybe getting an internship. But I would go as far to say who you know is more important than what you know. That's just my personal belief.
It is.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Custom Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Baines. I've gotten a lot of requests from individuals who are looking for their first job in tech, and I wanted to take this opportunity to interview a couple of recruiters from Lincoln Financial Group. I'm very happy and pleased to be joined today by Marvina Hamilton and Kayla McLaughlin. Kayla, I hope I said your name right, because I did not even check that with you before hopping on here. But I'm really excited. All right, awesome. Really excited to be joined today by Kayla and Marvina. They're going to kind of talk to us today about what they typically look for from candidates that are applying to Lincoln Financial Group, how you all can improve your chances of potentially landing a job at Lincoln Financial Group, and then also just some tips and advice based on all their years of experience, both as career services employees at universities and then also as recruiters at Lincoln Financial. So Marvina, Kayla, thank you so much for joining today. How are you both doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just referred to you both as recruiters, just general, but I know there's different types of recruiters and you both have different types of roles at Lincoln Financial Group. And I know you both are running crazy during the regular recruiting cycle. So I appreciate you hopping on here, but I'll kind of give you both the opportunity to kind of introduce yourself and maybe talk more specifically about the role that you have at Lincoln Financial. And I don't know, Marvina, do you want to kick it off or?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again, Andrew, for having us. This is amazing. I'm Marvina Hamilton. I am a recruiting specialist with Lincoln Financial Group. My primary focus is early career talent recruiting. So that's college students for our internship program and our 2-year Lincoln preparation program for new and recent graduates. And one of my focus areas of recruiting is IT. So I look forward to having this conversation. Thanks again for having us.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And then Miss Kayla, what you got?
Hey, everyone. So again, my name is Kayla McLaughlin, and I am a diversity recruiter at Lincoln Financial Group. So I source for diversity candidates or candidates that come from diverse backgrounds, and I actually recruit for everything. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've seen you, Kayla, you and your team, y'all are heavy on every HBCU campus on LinkedIn. So I know y'all stay busy on the recruiting side of things. And Marvina, I guess I'll kind of kick it off with you. I know I reached out to you yesterday and I was asking you hey, are there any specific roles that you guys are recruiting for? And you had an application developer role. And one of the things that I kind of want to help people understand is what do employers typically look for from candidates when deciding, hey, is this somebody that we're going to accept for a role? So maybe can you kind of speak about maybe specifically to your application developer role or any other general role? What do you typically look for when candidates apply or when they're interested in pursuing a tech career at Lincoln Financial?
Sure, absolutely. So with the application developer role that I'm currently recruiting for, that is not early career specific. So in our down season, as we're preparing for fall recruiting season, I do assist with just some of our regular full-time direct hire roles at Lincoln. So in looking for, the candidates that stand out for any role at Lincoln, it's definitely those candidates who are meeting our must-have requirements. So our job descriptions, we try to be very clear and concise with what we're looking for. And we have a must-have section for skills and requirements, and then a nice-to-have section. So as long as a candidate is hitting each thing in that must-have section, then I know that's somebody I'm looking at moving forward with. And then with a role like an application developer or a Scrum Master, which are two of the roles I've been assisting with, because we get such a large number of applicants, it's then who is meeting those nice-to-haves. So Course with application development, we're looking at someone who has, if it's a specialist role like this one, typically 3 to 5 years of experience in application development, Python experience. We're trying to move into more of an AWS cloud environment. So someone who has certifications in that area is going to be a standout candidate for that type of role. And then just other big things are team collaboration. That's huge. And someone who is really going to be able to bring some new and fresh ideas and skills to Lincoln. So that comes with the phone screen. So we may get into a little bit more of what our recruiting process looks like later in the conversation, where I'll touch on the different steps after the resumes are reviewed and the phone screens, what happens next.
To follow up with that, like, let's kind of walk them through the journey, right? Like, you guys start with the sourcing, and Kayla, maybe you want to chime in on, like, you guys are heavily on like campuses like all the time. So I don't know if y'all reckon up them freaking flyer miles or what, but it's a lot of good work you're doing. But can you kind of start like, how do candidates improve their chances of even being found by a recruiter, whether it's like on campus, online, or whatever, if they want to begin the process of potentially being hired or sourced or whatever the case may be? How can they kind of get on your radar, whether it's like on campus or online?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. So I think that all of the recruiters at LFG are like super personable, right? So do we have HBCUs that we partner with and, minority serving organizations? Absolutely, right? Like that's definitely where we get candidates. But I have people connect with me on LinkedIn all the time, right? So I always encourage students to network, right? Like never be afraid to shoot me a message, and say like, hey, I'm wondering if I could have a quick chat with you about my interests and find out if Lincoln is a good fit. Like I'm always willing to do that. Even in my email signature, students can easily just click on that and schedule time on my calendar for 2-hour time slots during each day. So we're not hard to find, we're not hard to, I feel like, really get in contact with. So, that's definitely what I would suggest.
I know my LinkedIn inbox is like trash right now. Like it's just blown up from people wanting to know like if I can help them find a job or like being on a podcast or whatever. So I can only imagine what y'all's inboxes look like right now. Like how can they improve their chances, right? Because I've gotten messages from some people where it's like, do you have a job for me? And like, that's it. So I guess like, what are some like tips or advice that people can implement to like improve their chances of actually getting a response back from a recruiter, whether it's at Lincoln Financial or anybody in general? Like, are there any like best practices or advice that you guys would share?
So for me, like you said, our inboxes can get jumbled up really quickly, and it's coming with specific information. Introduce yourself. Let me know what position you've applied for. Show me that you've put some effort in already. I will get some messages of I'm looking for an internship or I'm looking for a job. What do you have available? We don't have time to, go through and figure out what a candidate or prospective candidate might be eligible for. So by showing me that you've taken the initiative and you've put in some effort and work already, that's letting me know some things, and it's going to help me to guide our conversation a lot better than just something very generic. So that's a little tip I can give.
Yeah. To add to that, I would also say like make sure your profile is up to date, right? Like make sure your profile looks good. 9 times out of 10, if you reach out to a recruiter, whether they respond or not, they're probably going to go look at your profile. And I think what they see on there is probably going to determine whether or not they think you're a good candidate. I think some people don't take the time and the care to really update their LinkedIn profiles to, go to the Career Center or get professional help from friends or family, colleagues. I think that your LinkedIn profile needs to look good. It needs to be up to date, and it needs to really, it really highlight some of your best skills.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Yeah, I think taking that initiative and showing that like, hey, you've done some of the initial legwork and you're not asking somebody to go find a job for you. Like that's not, you don't have time
We're
to
not
do that, like you
headhunters.
said. Yeah, exactly. Like that's not how it works. And then also,
Right.
making sure that the profile is updated. When you guys are sourcing online, like, are you guys searching for like typical keywords on LinkedIn or Indeed, or like, how do you typically find candidates online?
Yeah, so I do a lot of sourcing on LinkedIn. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to start with our partner schools, right? And, look at those first. But in addition to that, it really just depends on the role that I'm sourcing for. So, for example, Mina mentioned like AWS or even like cybersecurity, right? I'm probably going to go to the job description, going back to Marvina mentioning those must haves. I'm going to go right back to that and I'm going to be looking at those key phrases. So, I always encourage students to make sure that, when you submit your resume or when you update your LinkedIn profile, if you do have those must haves, make sure they're also in your LinkedIn profile because, as a recruiter on LinkedIn, when I utilize LinkedIn Recruiter, I am searching for those keywords and it's going to be exactly what's in the job description and what they're asking for.
Just really quickly, I do want to add, as Kayla was talking about too, with resumes, just making sure resumes are updated. And if there's like a GitHub link or anything, any type of online portfolio, make sure your work is updated on that portfolio link. Sometimes it may be older work, or I've even seen where there's no work at all. They've just included a link. So just make sure that information is up to date.
All good advice. When talking about or when thinking about like the application process, I remember being like this college student thinking like, hey, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna get like damn near a perfect GPA, apply to jobs, and they're just gonna be like in love with me because I'm like cum laude graduate, I'm whatever, like I'm talented and everything. I had no internships or nothing. Let's kind of talk to like the young college or early career graduate, because I know you guys spend a lot of time on that. What advice would you kind of have for people that are getting ready to graduate college? Maybe they haven't had any internship, but now they're like, life is hitting them and staring them in the face. Like, I gotta like get a job now. Do you have any advice for that typical scenario? And it's kind of like a catch-22, right? Like you can't get a job without experience, but you can't get experience without a job. But for the individual that didn't take advantage of getting an internship or didn't have that opportunity, do you have any advice for that specific individual?
I think that the really cool thing about IT, which is very different from, other fields, is that you can self-teach so much stuff, right? Like I know for a fact we've hired candidates that, maybe have a really hefty resume and it's all project work, like Marvina mentioned the GitHub, we cannot stress that enough. Like there's YouTube, there's LinkedIn learning videos, there's all types of free and paid courses that you can take, certifications that you can receive. I mean, like your resume will tell the story of if you were really trying to kind of pick up that slack from not having an internship or not. If all you've done is maybe like worked in retail, you don't have a GitHub or your GitHub link is empty, or you know what I mean, then you're obviously not putting in the work. So I do believe that having an internship is really important. And of course, that's what we want to see on your resume. But for the student that maybe missed out on that opportunity, like you have so much freedom to learn on your own, right? To network and to work on, outside projects and get with your other friends that graduated in your program and build, programs with them. I mean, I think IT is just so cool, right? When you look at, the Googles and the Microsofts, like some of them, they don't even require degrees, like they're really just looking at your project work and they're looking at your experience and the skills that you bring to the table. So I always tell students, like, don't sleep on, things that you can teach yourself and things that you can do on your own.
Yeah, that accountability part is so important and critical. And I think it's a different mindset that's required, because I think a lot of college students are so used to like the professor or the teacher telling them, hey, do X, Y, Z. But then it's like, hey, the real world, like you got to brand yourself and tell the story. And like if you have a resume that just shows fast food joints all the time, like that doesn't tell the story of like your problem solving ability and everything. Marvina, I did a little bit of research and I saw I know you mentioned you had a 22-year-old son. I saw he graduated with honors and he already got a job lined up, right? So he's you like, yo, baby, you're not going to be out here jobless. You're going to graduate with something to go to.
Absolutely.
Did you help him with the job hunt process, or was he kind of like very...
No, I did not. He's very intrinsically motivated. He's always been that way. It was just, instilled in him from growing up, from his father and I. So he got to college, he did what he was supposed to do, and he got his first internship after his sophomore year with Google. And then after his junior year with Microsoft. And so he was then offered the full-time opportunity to be hired on full-time with Microsoft after his internship. So That's what it's about. And before that, I love telling his journey because before college, he worked at McDonald's. His freshman year, he worked at Walmart Neighborhood Market. So he was getting the customer service. I will say to anyone, I love seeing that on a student's resume. Show me that you've worked in some jobs where it really requires you working with the public or having to use your communication skills, because those soft, or what I like to call power skills, are what's missing. It's great that if you have a super high GPA, but if you're not kind of well rounded with that, and you've worked in some jobs and you've been in organizations and had leadership roles in that, those are the students to me that stand out. That shows that you have good time management skills and that you can focus. And so in a corporate environment, especially, that's why we look for students who have had internship opportunities previously, because we know they've had that experience, especially when we're going into our full-time roles or our two-year development program. But for those students who are looking for an internship, I like seeing where either they've been employed before or at least volunteered. Like there are too many opportunities for them to get experience and put themselves out there. So I look for a few different things. I'll be honest, it depends on the role.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good. Now, and congrats to your son. And I think it's
Thank you.
even. I know you're a proud mom. I remember graduating. My dad telling like everybody everywhere, like my son is an engineer. Like we're in HEB, which is a grocery store, and he's just randomly telling the cashier, and I'm like, there's no reason to be telling this person this. Like they do not care.
Yeah, but you just wait. You just wait.
All right. This has all been great so far. I want to kind of have you guys walk us through like the recruiting process in general. And I guess this is for somebody that maybe is applying online, so they don't get the opportunity to meet you all on campus, or maybe they do, but then they go back and they apply online. What happens to that resume after they apply? What's the interview process like? What are like some of the best practices that you've seen for individuals that have landed the role? All that kind of stuff. And I guess to start with like the online application, right? I used to hate applying online because I swear it seemed like you would apply and it would like just go into like a digital trash can or like a black hole, and like nobody would actually see this and review this. And I was like, I know I'm prepared for this job. So like, what happens when a candidate does submit their resume or their application? Is it being screened by like a applicant tracking system and looking for keywords, going in one pathway if it has the keywords, another path if it doesn't? So can you kind of start there with like the student or the individual hits submit on the virtual application? What happens next after that?
Yep, I'll walk through those steps. So we do not have an applicant tracking system that weeds out based on keywords. So as soon as someone applies, then the recruiter assigned to that requisition will see their resume. So we go in, we look at each resume for someone who's applied, and we'll disposition them. So if it's a candidate we'd like to move forward with, there are different buckets that we're able to move them into. If it's someone that we feel is not qualified for that role, then we'll disposition them out as not being qualified or something of that nature, and they will receive an email notification of that. So we do try to adhere to certain timelines because we do not like to leave anyone hanging in that regard, so that they can receive that feedback as soon as possible. So once we determine that, hey, this may be a viable candidate for this position, the next step is to set up a phone screen. Or if we do get a large number of candidates who look good, we may forward their resumes over to the manager just, to determine who would you like to move forward with us phone screening, so that we can then have an in-depth conversation with them and go into more details about the position, talk to them about the rate of pay. We try to be very transparent at Lincoln Financial Group because we don't like to waste anyone's time, and we do know that that's important. So we talk about that during the conversation and just get a better feel for the candidate, what their skills are, what their goals are. Would they be a good fit culturally? The Lincoln environment is amazing. So we just want to make sure that someone's going to be able to fit in with the Lincoln culture. And then if all goes well with that, then the next step is to set up an interview with the hiring manager. And we try not to, especially for early career roles, do more than 2 rounds of interviews. Like with a manager, some may go to 3. And it's conversational. We don't do coding tests at Lincoln. And that's why it's very important for a candidate to be able to clearly articulate about their skills, be able to walk through the steps of how they did a certain project, because we do know that it's easy to go in on a resume and just list skills and list that you did a project. So we want to hear from you, the candidate. What did you do from A to Z? How did you start this project and see it through to completion? And then just have some general other conversation too. So yeah, so once the manager interviews are done, we try to move very quickly with the process and let candidates know if they're going to move forward for hire.
And I'm glad you mentioned that it's more so conversational based. Are there typical types of questions that you ask, like to try to determine, hey, is this person a good culture fit? Do they have like the technical skill set or knowledge? Like, is there typically a general type of question that you may ask, or is it just purely like based on their resume, their experience, and kind of how the conversation goes?
Yeah, it's general. And of course, you're always going to have the tell me about yourself, so just
Yeah.
that the icebreaker question to see how comfortable they are and relaxed. Are they able to speak clearly and concisely? There's a lot of ums, which is fine, so we do understand that people are nervous. So it's about trying to put them at ease. We're a laid back environment. If there's anything that I need a candidate to elaborate on further, my goal as the recruiter is to set them up for success, to move forward, to meet with a manager. So I'm never trying to stump anybody. I'm just trying to get a better feel for who they are, what they enjoy about Lincoln. Please, you all do your research about companies before you get on a phone screen. That is so important. I've had candidates call us the wrong company name, not know anything about Lincoln Financial Group. At least tell me that we're based in Radnor, Pennsylvania, and the Philadelphia Eagles Stadium is named after Lincoln Financial Group. So just something to show that you've done a little bit of research is helpful. You have some candidates that come where it's like, oh my goodness, they memorized the whole About Us page. So you don't have to go that far, but do your homework, please.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. And I'm sure that leaves like a positive impression on you guys to show like, hey, this person really cares. They're taking initiative. It just kind of shows like the type of individual that they are. So I appreciate that advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can add to that briefly. So, as far as like, the questions that we ask, the tell me about yourself is definitely one, but we also usually ask like, why Lincoln? Why are you interested in Lincoln Financial Group? And for me, when I'm doing a screen, that question is really kind of going to give me the culture fit, because traditionally a student will say, well, talk about our diversity, or maybe they talk about Eagles for Autism, or how we give back to the community, and they kind of align with like values. I think traditionally when an employer asks you that question, that's kind of what they're trying to figure out, is like, do your values align with Lincoln's values? Like, why is this a good fit? And it's usually culturally, like why this position is like, okay, well, why do you want this job? But when they ask why this company, they're really trying to get to the nitty gritty of like a culture.
Gotcha. I'm going to go off track a little bit because I think it is kind of rare, like what I've noticed from Lincoln Financial and then you and the rest of your team, Kayla and Marvina. But like the investment in diversity, like, of course, like people put it on the flyer and they'll like, when Black History Month comes around, they'll make an IG post about it. But like, I actually see y'all like very active out there, like doing the work. So I guess I'm kind of curious, like, where does that interest and that passion and that investment, like, why is that so important to Lincoln?
Yeah. So the thing about diversity is, in general, not even speaking for Lincoln specifically, is that diversity makes us better, right? Diversity in thought. Like if you think about putting together a team, right? Even we're talking about the Eagles, right? Like you have all these different players that have these different skills, and all their contributions get them to the Super Bowl, right? Because of their differences, not because they all do the exact same thing and play the exact same way. And I think that any company, including Lincoln, is the same way, right? If you are building a team of cybersecurity folks, and everyone has a different skill set, or they have a different background. They were raised differently. They approach problems in a different way based on their upbringing. I mean, I think diversity in general just makes for a better product, for a better company, for a better overall experience, and just for a better environment. I think that it's a really good like checks and balances as well, right? Because if you don't have a diverse team, or if you don't have a diverse company, then everyone's doing the thing, doing everything the same. So as far as like where the motivation comes from, I think it starts at the top, honestly. There's really never a time where we have to push really hard to get leadership to understand why we need to do something. Me, along with my colleague, Alicia, we have so much autonomy in our role, and they kind of just let us roll with it, like they trust us. I'm an HBCU grad. I went to North Carolina A&T. Alicia went to Clark Atlanta. So I think that having those HBCU roots is definitely a really big driving factor for us as well. Marvina used to work at Winston-Salem State, so she's got some HBCU roots. And I think that we really get it, right? We've been on these campuses. We've seen the students. We've been a student. And I think that we really understand the need as well.
I would just like to say, too, it's about being very intentional. Lincoln is a very intentional company. I've worked for a lot of companies, and I just love that they're about not just, talking the talk, like you mentioned, we walk the walk. And if something's brought to the attention of our leaders, which they highly encourage us to do, then it's about, okay, let's see what we need to do to get this implemented. We have a lot of projects that are going on the back end to try to figure out how we can increase our, diversity efforts. And whether it's from having our first woman leader in Ellen Cooper to making sure we have diverse leadership in our executive leadership team, they do whatever it takes. So yeah, Alicia is the reason that I came on board. She was extremely intentional about making sure that Lincoln diversifies who's working, is the workforce, and bringing Kayla on board, and just with the early career talent team, which is a new team as well that I'm on. We just put a lot of work in on the back end on making sure we're partnering with the correct schools and the organizations that can help us move forward in a more diverse way.
I definitely 100% agree that like it has to start at the top, because even if all the people at the bottom or the people that are, boots on the ground are really bought into diversity, leadership is not, like things are going to get nowhere in terms of policy and initiatives and things of that nature. So I love all that advice. The only thing I didn't really care for was the Philadelphia Eagles reference, because they're trash. And I'm a Cowboys fan. As a Dallas Cowboys fan, you got to support America's team. So y'all kind of lost me there for a minute, but everything else I love. So I appreciate all the advice and the input there. And you guys both did a great job kind of outlining some of the questions that people can anticipate during the interview process. I know there's different formats and different thoughts about how to answer a question. Do you have any advice there in terms of, hey, how should I answer this, so that people don't ramble when they're being asked a question like, tell me about yourself, or if they're being asked about a specific project or something that they've worked on? Do you have any advice there in terms of how to structure their answer or anything of that nature?
Please practice. If you're in college or even after college, you can still use your career services office, discuss it with a friend. There's plenty of practicing platforms, but we know that it's, there's no perfect way to do it. If you stumble, that's fine. If you have questions or forget a question, it's okay to say, hey, can you repeat that for me? So yeah, just make sure your answer though is well thought out and prepare. I've really just had some candidates who I can tell they kind of just woke up and answered the phone and started talking. So take some time to gather yourself, even if it's a phone interview. Dress like you're, going somewhere professionally. To me, that actually helps you with your delivery, and relax, have fun with it. Yeah, we're all human at the end of the day, and it's just a matter of having fun, ask questions, and let your personality shine through.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also add, in the Career Center, I used to preach the STAR method. If you don't know what that is, definitely Google it. But I think that especially IT people, they're very like technical, right? So they probably do want like some explicit directions. And I would say like the STAR method is a really good way to structure your answers. It's situation, task, action, result, and you can structure your answers in that way. I would also say if it's a phone interview, it's okay to have notes, right? Like, so you shouldn't be reading off your notes. Like, it shouldn't sound like you're reading a script over the phone. But if it's phone, then they can't see that you have notes in front of you. So feel free to, like Marvina said, practice, prepare, do your research, and, just kind of take general notes. We've already dropped some gems as far as the types of questions that we ask, and other companies do ask those same questions as well. And I think that you can kind of go ahead and craft some responses, even if it's just bullet points, which is kind of my preference. Is if you write out whole sentences, it might start to sound like you're reading a script, but just like, okay, I want to talk about this bullet point. I want to talk about this bullet point. So that would be, something else I would suggest.
To add on to that too, really quickly, just look back at the job description. Please make sure you have the job description in front of you and talk about either your skills or experience that correlates with the job description. So that's something good that's going to help you structure that too.
Definitely.
I appreciate that, because I'm gonna be honest, technical people are very thought out, give me exactly the answer,
Right.
set me up. If it's somewhat arbitrary, some people kind of struggle with that, and they'll be like, I don't know if I should do this or that, just tell me the answer. So I appreciate you both for breaking that down in detail. One thing I didn't cover that I kind of wanted to hit on is best practices for resumes, right? Any thoughts or ideas there? Should I have an objective at the top of the resume? Should I have 7 bullet points for each one of my work experiences and things of that nature? Because I read a statistic that I think people spend 7 seconds initially reading a resume. So what are some thoughts or best practices there when designing that resume? And thankfully you got AI tools now that can kind of help out a lot with this. But any advice from you all individually?
I think resumes are extremely subjective, so I actually don't even like answering this question. But again, going back to the technical folks, they want to hear instructions. I think for bullet points, shoot for 5 to 7. I saw Marvina's face. We're not a big fan of objectives. I think that it's really not necessary. Most people end up just regurgitating exactly what's on their resume, and it's I'm going to see that anyway. The only way that I would tell a student to do an objective is if your major is one thing and you're interested in something really specific, or you have this crazy backstory where, maybe you took some years off to be a caretaker or something, if you have some kind of really specific situation and maybe you want to mention that along with your experience and your objective, then fine. But other than that, I don't think it's necessary. Include your LinkedIn in the header, include your GitHub in the header or your professional portfolio. Make sure that those things are updated again. And I like to see a skill section. I'm not sure about Marvina, but along with, your experience, your work experience, your project section, also have a skill section as well.
And to piggyback off of Kayla, just have the important information at the top. The less searching we have to do in sifting through a resume, because as you said, 7 seconds is accurate. Maybe 15 I'll take. But if I have to start looking and really trying to figure out, okay, when are they graduating, or when did they graduate? And do they have the skills that we're looking for? Do they know this programming language? Then it's okay, it starts getting a little tiring. So you may move forward with another resume, but just make sure you have all of the important information at the top and keep it just clean and clear. No pictures are needed, no graphics, all of that, just simple, very simple.
Okay, we're coming up to the close. I got a few more questions for you both. Let's talk about salary negotiation real quick. Have y'all seen people successfully negotiate a higher salary or a bonus or anything of that nature that wasn't originally included in the job offer? And if so, what are some of those things that you've noticed that the successful individuals did versus the non-successful individuals?
I'll say for early career, we have set pay rates, so we don't deal with negotiations in that regard. When I have recruited for some of the full-time direct hire roles, if someone's requesting a higher salary or wanting to negotiate, then you have to be coming with some solid skill sets, something that's out. Definitely, you have to have all of the must-haves and the nice-to-haves too. It's be able to articulate clearly why. You can't just say, oh, I want $10,000 more just because I feel that that's what I should have. Make sure you're able to advocate for yourself. Do your market research. That helps too. And tell us why you feel that you deserve a higher amount than what we've budgeted for that position.
Gotcha. Okay. And then one more question for you. The end of the resume, or at the end of the interview, I should say, it's always, do you have any questions for me? The recruiter asking the candidates. I've heard different thoughts about this in terms of, hey, it's okay if you don't have any questions. I've heard, hey, you should definitely have some questions. Here are some ideas. What's been kind of your experience? And are there any questions in particular that were dang, that was a really good question. This really impressed me that the candidate asked this?
Yeah, I think you should always ask questions at the end. But something I don't like is like, I say students, but individuals or candidates just asking questions for the sake of asking a question. Like, be intentional about the question because it's
Yeah.
going to show me that you already had them written down for the most part. Now, sometimes you may get into the conversation or the interview and something may come up and you might want to jot it down right then. But I think that you should always have questions. And I also say a lot of candidates are scared of that. You know, they don't want to sound like they're not knowledgeable about something, or they don't want to sound like they've done their research. And a quick tip for that, I always say, is state something that you know before you ask the question, right? So instead of just saying, do y'all have this? You might say, hey, I saw on your website, blah, 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 but I was wondering if you had this. So that way, you know, you're sounding like, okay, this person does know a little something. They have done their research. I can't think of any questions off the top of my head that have really stood out to me before, but I just think a well thought out question that you've already written down, maybe at least 2 or 3, proves that you've done your research. So
Yeah.
That's good. I love that advice though, actually. Like that, especially like starting with what you know and then asking the question off
mhm,
of there. Like even if the
mhm,
question is kind of a little bit left field, like at least the
mhm,
first part kind of gave you some grace. So I think that's some good
exactly.
advice. I appreciate y'all for coming on here. This has been like a lot of fun for me, a lot of gems shared. So I'm really glad that you all were able to share all these insight and advice for people that are looking for work or trying to figure out how they can land that internship or wherever they're at in their career. Real quick, how can people find y'all? Like if they want to find you on LinkedIn or whatever, how can people get in touch with y'all and find y'all?
Yep. You can search for Marvina Hamilton on LinkedIn. Yeah, and feel free to send me a message of how you heard about me. That helps. And I'm happy to connect with you.
Yeah, same deal. Kayla McLaughlin on LinkedIn. When you send the message, mention cuSTEM Journeys, mention your name, you know, and I think that we can definitely connect. We can definitely have a conversation.
Dope. I love it. All right, cool. Well, that's it for you guys who are watching. I really appreciate your support. As always, we couldn't make this happen without you guys supporting the channel. I really feel like this was a very valuable episode for you all to gain some insight and knowledge about how to land your job, the next job you're pursuing. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Peace.
Bye bye. Thank you.